The former Defence Secretary Ben Wallace, who is certainly no stranger for working very closely with the IDF in his time as Defence Secretary, has written an article for the Daily Telegraph today in which he seems to suggest that Israel is engaging in collective punishment. He has questioned whether the legal basis for the war is going to run out in terms of the Israeli government. Is Ben Wallace signalling a fracturing of the very strong support that the British government has so far offered to Israel as it fights this war?
Well, I hope not, because I think he's wrong in fact and he's wrong legally. Israel does everything in any war that it unfortunately has to defend itself. We did not start this war. We did not want this war. This war was started by a horrible massacre, the worst that has ever been seen in this territory. And we also have an ongoing threat. The Hamas leadership, both in Gaza, Sinwar, and in Qatar, have said that this is just a dress rehearsal, that they're going to do this again and again. And so Israel not only has the moral and legal right, it has its obligation to defend its people. It's the most basic thing any country could do. Now, war is ugly. Unfortunately, we are being as precise as we possibly can. But in any war, there's going to be casualties that none of us wanted, including our own soldiers from friendly fire. And it's a very, very tragic thing. But who started this war and who is threatening to keep attacking Israel? It's an ongoing threat that we have and we have to face.
Over the weekend, we also saw David Cameron, the UK Foreign Secretary, and the Foreign Secretary of Germany alter their position again slightly, calling for a sustained ceasefire. How far away are we from achieving that sustained ceasefire in Gaza?
Well, I'd like to ask them what sustained means. We had a sustained ceasefire on October 6th from the year before. We had a sustained ceasefire the year before that. And the question is, what do they mean by that? If what they mean is that Hamas gives up its terrorist activities, dismantles itself, and returns the 140 hostages left, then I think Israel would be in favor of a sustained ceasefire. But does he mean that we should leave this ongoing existential threat to stay as our neighbors? Would Britain stand for that? If anybody did half of what was done to us on that October 7th? So again, I am in favor of a ceasefire if it means dismantling the threat and returning our hostages home.
And of course, we shouldn't forget that there was and had been for well over a decade a sustained ceasefire on the 6th of October, which was breached by Hamas.
Well, no, every year there was a new one. Every year since the year that we left Gaza in 2005. And from the minute Hamas was in power in 2006, we started getting rocket attacks into our territory. That alone would have been enough for us legally to go in and destroy Hamas, but we didn't. We were patient and we kept signing ceasefires. We signed about 5-6 ceasefires. So what's sustainable? That's my question to Cameron.
Okay, well, a very good chest. If he wants to come on, we will put it to him on your behalf.
Thank you.
But we do also read in the press that there's going to be a slight change in tactics, and the Americans and the British and others around the world are looking to support Israel as it goes to a more targeted approach. Undoubtedly, there has been large-scale civilian loss of life in Gaza, although figures are disputed. There was large-scale civilian loss of life in Israel on the terrorist attacks of the 7th of October. What change in tactics are we going to see by the IDF to have a more targeted approach?
Well, let me tell you, if our war was not taking care of, not trying to limit civilian casualties, you know, our air power is enough to destroy the whole place. Similarly to the way that the UK turned around the war through their Dresden carpet bombing. But we don't do that. We put our own young men, many of them are 19, 20-year-old, the ages of my children, in harm's way, going door to door in order to weed out the terrorists rather than just indiscriminately bombing buildings. And so we will see more of that. And that means that, unfortunately, more casualties on our side. And that's how far Israel goes to avoid civilian casualties of the innocents. And Hamas do exactly the opposite. They hide in tunnels under the civilian people that they use as their human shields. And so we're dealing with a very dangerous enemy, because that enemy that we're dealing with don't care about their own civilians, and we care about them more than they do. And that is a very difficult thing to fight with.
But your Benjamin Netanyahu, has to continue to build a global coalition around the action that Israel is taking. He's reported to have said that he's proud of having stopped a Palestinian state. Does that accurately reflect his view? And is that a good way of building support for a coalition for Israel on the global stage?
Well, I think that we have to be realistic about what a two-state solution means. And I've been speaking about this for a number of days now. And the point is that really 5-6 times the Palestinians have had the opportunity to create this state that they said they wanted, and they've rejected every single time. And every single time that Israel has offered a peace deal, each one more generous than the next, it's been returned with war and violence and terrorism. And so the question really is, A, do the Palestinians want a state, or do they simply want the destruction of our state? And B, is it dangerous for us to be in the position to offer them any type of territorial compromise when all we've been met with, like with Gaza, we left Gaza in 2005 in the hope that they would build their state, they would start building their state in Gaza, beautiful piece of coastal land on the Mediterranean. They could have turned it into Dubai, they could have turned it into Singapore, but no, they invited Iran and they turned it into a terror hub. And so the question is it dangerous for us to even offer a state? I would love to believe that one day the Palestinians will have good leadership that want peace, as Sadat, Gandhi, Mandela, that then will reach out to Israel. And that's the moment that we could possibly talk about a state. Israel believes in the self-determination of the Palestinian people. I'm not sure they believe in our self-determination in our ancestral homeland.